Chapter 11, real estate contracts. What is a contract? What isn't a contract? Things like that. So here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about in real estate contracts, the different types of contracts, the different stages of a contract, and also what is needed, the essential elements of a valid contract, okay? So we're going to be talking a lot about the essential elements of a valid contract, okay? So let's define what is a contract, okay? There's a voluntary agreement between legally competent parties to perform or refrain from performing some legal act. It's important. Legal act, okay? Contracts cannot be for illegal acts, okay? And it's supported by legal tender, legal consideration. So let's talk about first the essential elements of a contract. So first you have to have competent parties. Now, if you have competent parties and you have someone under the age of 18, that is potentially voidable in the state of New Jersey, okay? Contracts that are involving minors are voidable at the consent of the minor, okay? So that's why a lot of times you do not enter into contracts with minors. However, there are some contracts, okay, some implied contracts that we'll talk about that entering into with the minor is perfectly valid, perfectly fine to do so, okay, but still potentially voidable at the action of the minor, okay. Now, the thing that we need for a contract is offer and acceptance. We need competent parties, okay? And something, here's the thing, they say at least 18 years of age. They talk about age a lot there. Competent parties also means that they must not be under undue influence, under the influence of alcohol, inebriated, drugs, okay? So all parties must be competent. Also, mental disabilities and things like that. They need to be competent, okay? Otherwise, a legal guardian needs to be signing for them. Something else that I'm going to talk about with competent parties is this. Something that comes up a lot. They love asking questions in regards to, okay, what if someone signs, is seemingly competent, okay, at the time that they sign a contract, then it is later deemed by either a court or a medical professional that they had, in fact, a mental handicap, disability that at the time that they signed it, and that they are now considered deemed to be incompetent. Although they had let off that they were competent, they were able to sign this. Could that contract be voided? Answer is yes, okay? Competency is not left up to the decision between the two parties, is what a court of law would decide or what an outside person would perceive, okay? So competent parties offer an acceptance, okay? So there has to be an offer and there has to be an acceptance. Next essential element is a consideration. There has to be some sort of either legal tender. So when I say consideration, it could be good or valuable. Good or valuable, meaning that it could be legal tender, exchange of value, or it could be for love and affection, okay? Next is the legality of an object, okay? So it may not involve in a legal process. So you have to have competent parties, you have to have offer and acceptance, you have to have consideration, and you have to have legality of the object. You have to have legality of it. You cannot get someone to sign a contract to sell you marijuana. That is not a valid contract, okay? Now let's talk about the different types of contracts that we're going to have, okay? We're going to have express, implied, okay? And we'll talk about those two first because those two are similar to one another. So an express contract, okay, is either oral or written, okay? So this could be oral or written, but the terms of the contract are specific intentions, okay? That are laid out for you when it comes to an expressed contract, okay? Express contract is laid right out there for you, and it is either oral or written, okay? Then there is an implied contract. Guess what? I am a big fan of nerds. I love nerds. So whenever I go and I stop at a Wawa, That is a New Jersey specific thing. So if you're watching outside the state of New Jersey, we would say 7-Eleven. So 7-Eleven and Wawa, and I have to get my nerds. I'm going to go in. I'm going to get my nerds. I'm going to go up to the counter. I'm going to hand my nerds to the cashier. They're going to say $2.19, please. I'm going to give them my money. They're going to give me the change and the nerds. Now, that is an implied contract. There doesn't need to be express terms put in that because it is implied that when I bring the nerds up to the counter and I pay for said nerds, then I get said nerds back. Okay, it is implied. Okay, and this is, remember I was telling you that there was certain contracts that a minor could get involved in that would be perfectly totally fine. How many times does a kid buy a pack of bubble gum? Okay, goes to a store, buys a Slurpee, something like that. Those are implied contracts that we could get into with a minor that would totally not necessarily be voidable because they bought it, they consumed it, they did it, and it's not illegal for them. Because remember, a contract, even implied contracts, have to be for legal objects. You can't sell things to a minor such as cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol, okay? Because that is an illegal contract, okay? Even though they're implied contracts, they are illegal. Legality of the object is not there. Then the next thing we're going to talk about is your contract unilateral or is it bilateral? Okay, unilateral contracts are what we typically call option contracts. Option contracts. So let's talk about options for a little bit. Option contracts. If I give my wife the option, I give her, and here's the thing, a contract will be express or implied, and then it will either be unilateral or bilateral. So it'll be one of the two. I don't like how the PowerPoint is breaking this down because, again, express or implied should be their own little grouping. Unilateral and bilateral should probably be their other little grouping, okay? So unilateral, I give my wife an option. I say, honey, tonight we can either go eat at Domino's or I could take you to that steakhouse. Now, what she's going to say to me is this: I would prefer to eat at Domino's. Gotta love that cheesy bread. So guess what? I am under the obligation then to take her to Domino's and get her some of those cheesy little Parmesan bites. I am under that obligation, okay? That is a unilateral option agreement, okay? Typically a rent to purchase. A rent to purchase is a unilateral agreement. The landlord is giving the option to the tenant to have a purchase at the end of it. The only person obligated to perform is the landlord if the tenant decides to do so, right? Okay, let's talk about bilateral. Oh, they didn't even have bilateral in there. Hey now, let's go back to the previous screen because we're going to say bilateral. So picture bilateral is actually down here. Okay, bad job, Kaplan. So bilateral is the opposite of our unilateral contracts, right? Okay. So it is when there are two parties that are obligated to act. So a lease is a bilateral agreement, okay? A lease is a bilateral agreement where you have two parties. One is obligated to pay the rent. The other is obligated to give a unit for you to rent that is specified in the lease, okay, for said period of time. That is a bilateral agreement. Purchase of a home, okay? Purchase price on a purchase of a home, excuse me. One is obligated to bring the funds to closing. The other is it has to give ownership, okay, pass title through deed to the homeowner, to the new homeowner, right? Next, we're going to talk about executed and executory. So executory means that there's still things that need to be done. So if a contract, okay, is, let's say, lease. I'm gonna go back to a lease because I really like the lease example. Let's say it's a 12-month lease. We are in the 6th month. That is an executory express contract. Do you see how we're working here? Executory express contract. Now, at the end of the lease, that was an express executed contract. Means both parties have performed. It is done. There is nothing left to enforce or to be obligated to be done. Okay? So executory and executed are two states of a contract. So again, the contract could be expressed or implied. So that lease is an express contract. It could be unilateral or bilateral. The lease is bilateral because there are two parties that are obligated to do something. In the 6 month of a 12-month lease, it will be executory. There's some things that need to be remains to be done. At the end of the term of the lease, it will have been an executed contract. Okay, so it will be a expressed bilateral executed contract. So that's what you're going to have to understand. Now, something else I want to talk about while we have this screen up, the a counteroffer offer situation, because I want to make sure that we understand what happens, because a lot of times when we're doing real estate, okay, there's a home for sale. Okay, home is for sale. Someone puts in an offer to purchase. Okay, that offer to purchase, let's say Friday, I represent a buyer. I present offer to purchase for $200,000. The home is listed for $225,000. Seller says, we want to think about it over the weekend. Now, I say to them, no, I want to get a counter. So they say, okay, our counter is $215,000. You give us $215,000. So there was an offer was $200,000. The counter was $215,000. Follow this. Write it down if you need to. Friday, offer of $200,000. Home was listed at $225,000. They countered on Friday at $215,000. Now, weekend comes, weekend goes. Seller says on Monday, hey, I want to take your $200,000 offer. Now, who is obligated to act on this? Is it a binding contract once they sign it? Is this mutual acceptance? It is not. It is not, okay? We are not in agreement, because here's the thing. Counter offers cancel the original offer, cancel that original offer, and creates a new offer. You see? So what happens is, in their unilateral expressed contracts, look at how we're doing this whole thing. So we have a unilateral express contract, which is an offer option, okay, to purchase the home. Person then cancels that, says, no, that's not good, creates a new one. Okay, so that $215,000, if my buyer said, hey, we want to do the $215,000, they could do that. Why could they do that? Because that is now the offer that is binding, that is out there. And unless it has a time frame in which it expires, that is the valid offer. Okay, that is the valid contract right there. Boom, done. So that's something that you're going to have to just kind of get used to, seeing these different kinds of explanations of a legal contract. Okay, now the validity of a contract. I'm going to talk about valid, enforceable, voidable, void. Void, we're going to start at the bottom. It is not a legal thing. Contract for murder, not legal. That is void. That won't even be brought up to a court of law, nothing like that. Let's go to the polar opposite end of the spectrum. Valid. Meets all the requirements. Competent parties, okay. Legality of the object. Let's see. So we have competent parties, legality of the object, offer and acceptance, and then we have consideration. Okay, we have all those things. It is valid. Okay, enforceable contract, kind of like a valid contract, but there might be some sort of question. Typically, enforceable contracts where there might be some sort of dispute, usually as far as the competency of the parties. Okay, if there is one party, let's talk about the inebriated example. Everyone loves the inebriated example. I love the inebriated example. You ready? So I am at a bar. I drink Shirley Temples. My friend JJ, he drinks hard whiskey. Now, we say, hey, JJ, I will sell you my home for $200,000. JJ says, write it on that napkin and let's get it done. Okay, so it's an express bilateral contract. Meets all the requirements except for that of competent parties. JJ is inebriated. Everything else is valid, though. Everything else is valid. Now, it could be enforceable If later on, when we are of sound mind, we say, hey, we're still fine with that. I know I was, several sheets to the wind. JJ says to me, hey, look, I know I'm several sheets to the wind, but I still want to buy your house for 200,000. We good? And that's enforceable. Voidable, usually when it has a minor involved. Okay? There's a minor involved. The minor usually has the right to cancel the contract. It is voidable on the action of the minor. Okay? So we talked about unenforceable contracts and undue influence a little bit. Okay? Now, we want to talk about something else. Like how do we get to the point where there's either it's executed, it's done, everything's fine, and also how do we change parties possibly in that? The really two big ones that we want to talk about here is assignment and novation. Okay, assignment and novation, because I think that those are two important ones to talk about. Performance of a contract basically means it is now executed, done, no problems. Discharge of a contract, that's usually a court of law, things like that. Default or breach of a contract is when someone is not performing a contract. Okay, so tenant is not paying, breach of a lease. Okay, if you're not willing to sell your home and you're in contract to sell it, breach of a contract. But let's talk about these two, because these are two that people usually don't understand or don't fully understand. Okay, first one is assignment. Okay, if I assign a contract to you, so let's say my name's on the contract. Let's say it's a purchase. I can, if the contract is assignable, assign that to someone else, meaning basically substitute my name for someone else. Okay, someone else steps into my place. Okay, all the terms of the contract stay the same. Novation. Novation's a little different. This happens very rarely, okay? But if you novate a contract, that means to substitute it for another contract, okay? Novation is a substitution of another contract, which could include the substitution of parties. And now a contract has to be able to be novated in order for a novation to occur, okay? So it's not automatic that every contract is going to be able to be novated or assigned. So keep that in mind. Assignment is trading places with an individual. Novation, trading places with a contract. And that's it. That is contracts in a nutshell. Bam, bam. As always, reach out to me if you ever have any questions. If not, take care. Have a great one.